Okay, so welcome everyone. So happy that you're all here to join us today. Happy Filipino American History Month and welcome to a Filipinos in Leadership event hosted by the Filipino Alumni Network at San Jose State University. Hey, my name is Maria Blaza, she, her pronouns, and I am your Director of Professional Development here at FAN. We're so excited to have you all here joining us today to hear from our amazing panel of speakers. In this session, we are fortunate to hear about each of their professional and or personal career journeys as Pinay for professionals, lessons learned along the way, and general advice on the ways to grow and develop one's career. So as we start off, before we start off anything, we're gonna go over some quick housekeeping rules. But first, let's go ahead and put some love in the chat. Use your emojis, use your reactions. Like let's blow it up. Like we are here, we are celebrating, we are in community, and so exciting. So use the chat, put your name, your pronouns, your title, organization, native land. Tell us where you are in the world. Apparently, we got some people from all across the country. So let's see that excitement in the chat. And my colleagues are going to drop that into the chat as we go on. But in the spirit of community with each other as best as we can, especially in a virtual space, absolutely encourage you all to be on camera, be present as best as possible. And then also to note, we will be recording this message, this event, and we'll share that with all the registrants in our newsletter and in a post email as well. We have, for accessibility purposes, we do have the automated closed captioning feature in Zoom activated. With this, you have the ability to move the captions around on your screen to a place more convenient for you. You can turn off the closed captioning feature entirely if you prefer to not have it up. To do so, please reference the bar at the bottom of your Zoom as pictured on the slide. Click on live transcript on the right-hand side and then click hide subtitles. If you're having any tech issues or trouble during the session, please send the message in the Zoom chat and one of our team members will assist you. And then now, at any point in the forum, if you have questions that come to mind that you really want to ask, highly encourage that you all drop that in the chat as well throughout the session. We do plan to have an audience Q&A near the end of the panel, time permitting, and we'll definitely try our best to ask your questions. And then finally, it's important to us at FAN that we acknowledge that for many of those tuning in from San Jose, California, or specifically downtown San Jose, where our university is located, that we reside on the unceded lands of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. Together, let us commit to educating ourselves and advocating for Indigenous peoples, communities neglected and displaced by the U.S. government and colonial powers across the world. To learn more about what land you're living on, please be sure to click on the link. We'll share the slide at the end as well. And yeah, you can check that out. And then onto our agenda. So starting off, we'll be introducing Alan Guig. He is our FAN's founding board chair and a very, very good friend of mine. Who'll share briefly about who we are as the Filipino Alumni Network, the organization hosting today's panel. Then we'll be introducing our speakers and kicking off our discussion with the help of our very own FAN General Board member, Josh Fontanilla, who will be moderating today's panel. In terms of Q&A, again, please drop your questions in the chat throughout the session, and then our teams will be grabbing as many of those. And again, we'll try to get to them towards the end of the event. And then closing us out, we'll share some brief announcements at the very end. So be sure to stick around for that. All right. So without further ado, I will now be passing it to Alan, who'll be sharing more about FAN and who we are. So Alan, take it away.
Yes, yes. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Marie. My name is Alan Guig, he, him, and for my day job, I actually do public policy and advocacy work here in Silicon Valley. But in today's capacity, I am honored and humbled to be speaking to you all in my role as one of the founders and current board chair of the Filipino Alumni Network at San Jose State University. It absolutely warms my heart to be joined by so many folks from all over today. As Marie mentioned, this is a happy Filipino American History Month, everyone. Not to be confused, of course, as Heritage Month. Our heritage as Fil-Ams is absolutely important, but this month is in honor of our history that is especially important because it dedicates itself to our accomplishments, our talents, our contributions to society as we know it throughout history. So for my little spiel right now, I actually just have the pleasure of doing one of my favorite things, which is talking to you all about the network, our story as a Filipino alumni network, and what we're all about. Taking a quick back look at the registrants as a whole, we realized that about half or 2/3 of the group actually are actually not from San Jose State. So first of all, welcome. But second of all, we actually thought this might be helpful context in terms of like setting the landscape and kind of understanding like, who's hosting the space and what room are we in today. So backing up a bit, as you can see on the slide, San Jose State actually holds one of the largest Filipinx student populations across the West Coast. Back in my time in undergrad, I was active in our university's Filipino club, Akbayan, which we were fortunate enough to have up to 1,000 paid and active members sign up with us annually and actually return to explore what our community had to offer. Pictured on the, actually, Mifri, if you can go to the slide before, pictured on that slide is one of my favorite things to share because it is not just hearing a statistic of how many members we have, but it is actually the chance when you get to see our community. And each photo at the top and bottom is like a unique group of students. So no, it's not the same group, but just in two different pictures. And it's just our new members. So we were, I think, like, don't get me wrong, I think while many of us were lucky to be in a space surrounded by so many Filipino Americans, which I understand is an absolute privilege that so many in our community across multiple different regions do not necessarily have that access to. Unfortunately, it didn't make it any easier to find community and what that meant as an alumni and bringing us to this space like today. So we didn't have an organization to connect to. We didn't have alumni as easily as accessible to contact. We didn't have professional mentors that we could look up to and as representation in the sector and as inspiration in the sector. That infrastructure just didn't exist yet. So recognizing this, myself and a tiny group of like a mighty ragtag team of like alumni, we got together, we asked ourselves, what does community look like to us now? What does community mean to us? And what do we want to see for our own community in the world? And most of all, what are we going to do about it? So the answer, spoiler alert, as we kind of alluded to, but we wanted to be the change we saw in the world. So we created a Filipino alumni network. And by no means is an alumni affinity group a new concept, right? Especially to many of the folks on this call. But historically at San Jose State, there have been many groups of alumni that have thought of this idea, but they didn't necessarily have the resources or labor to make it actualized in the busyness of everyday life. So if you go on to the next slide, Marie, what we did was that we got together, we put our brains together and we met often, we stayed consistent and we worked with the university, jumped through whatever hoops we needed to jump through. And then in July of 2021, we were born as an organization. The Filipino Alumni Network at San Jose State built off the mission of cultivating community beyond the SJSU experience, socially, culturally, professionally, for Filipinx alumni, students, and allies alike. Like many alumni associations out there, we hope to one day definitely offer programs like mentorship opportunities, networking events, create a scholarship fund to help pipeline the next generation, right? That is the vision, that is the goal, that is the pipeline that we hope to build. And today we are absolutely humbled to have you join us in our second year of our evolution, of our story. With our very next, with actually this event being our very first career panel as a network ever. And I think that is so exciting. That is something that puts the biggest smile on my face. And we're so happy for you all to join us. And to quote part of the sentiment with Isang Bagsak, but when one rises, we all rise. And even though many of you may not be affiliated with San Jose State or may have not even heard of our university before joining today, we are still one community and we are so happy to welcome you into our virtual home today. And with that being said, now entering our second year as an alumni association. Marie can go to the next slide. We have already learned so much from organizing many of our meetings virtually over the past year to even meeting in person at our launch event in downtown San Jose. We had more than like 40 alumni show up and believe in this vision. And we are so excited to continue this journey with you all. So with that being said, welcome everyone once again to the Filipino Alumni Network. I will now pass it off to Marie, who will begin by introducing what you all came here for today, an amazing event to listen to some of our amazing panelists. So thank you everyone for having me and for joining.
Thank you so much, Alan. Every time Alan talks about FAN, I just like want to cry because he just does it so good. So thank you so much, Alan, for just being such a leader. But thank you. And hope y'all just feel inspired just to like be in community. So thank you for that. All right. Main event. This is what we're here for. This is who we're here to listen and like get inspiration from. So please, again, in the chat, in your emojis, reactions, please give a warm welcome to our panelists. Again, using those reactions on Zoom, give a round of applause, even if you're on mute. We want to see y'all. But today we have Twila Tiong Neal, we have Jen Mendoza, Rizal Anhenko, Helen Ponce, and Jay Diosa Lazaro Gage here today to talk to y'all and share their insights and their love for this community and to share their stories. So each panelist will have a moment to introduce themselves. Remember, y'all have about a minute, but Twila, I will pass it off to you to start us off.
Good evening, everyone. So happy to see all of you. Mabuhay. I am a managing director at Accenture, and I lead strategic cloud first sales, our largest deals in the business across the health, life sciences, and consumer goods and services industries. Dialing in from my home in just north of New York City, where I was born and raised. And I am a mother of 2 young girls, one who just turned 1, the older one who will be turning 3 next month. And I am also a daughter of first-generation immigrants from the Philippines. My mom immigrated here in the late 60s to New York with a bachelor's degree in chemistry. And the best job that she could get at the time was as a bank teller in Citibank in one of the toughest neighborhoods in New York City, in Chelsea at the time. And my dad at around the same time had immigrated to New York City with a bachelor's degree in architecture. And the best job that he could get was as a pen engraver at Macy's. Notwithstanding the fact that they were here as first generation immigrants, they built a really beautiful, amazing family for me and my sister, Vanessa, who's also here in the audience today. Hey, sis. And they were just incredible role models for me. My mom ended up just scoring up the career ladder, retired as the head of foreign exchange for Citibank after being there for 30 years. And my dad retired as the lead architect of Port Authority of New Jersey. They were both trailblazers, first immigrants amongst all of their siblings. Though I was just so incredibly fortunate to have tremendous mentors, many of which were female. My Tita Mimi, who's here also, my Tita Lalit, who are both doctors on my mom's side, and my Uncle Cheeto, mostly on the business and medical side. And on my dad's side, my Tita Eckler and Uncle Boogie built and sustained an entire restaurant business in Pampanga in the Philippines. So we really had the best of both worlds growing up. And I'm just so excited to share some of our insights and background with you all today. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Mendoza. I am a transformation change manager at Cisco. I was born, raised, and educated in the Silicon Valley. I went to San Jose State, where I majored in public relations, and then I went off to Notre Dame to Namur, where I got my master's from the School of Business, focusing on public administration. When I think back to, who was a real role model in my life and growing up, I've got to give it up to my mom. She was a single mother of 5, and she worked for the United States Post Office in the marketing team as an expedited service specialist. So when I think back to her experience and her career, it inspires me and it motivates me today in my own career in transformation in tech. And I can go back to one of the most memories that I remember, her getting ready with her blue blazer suit and going off to work, where she worked on a project in the early 90s. Her team actually worked side by side with Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, in their little Los Gatos office, not a garage, where they actually work to develop, design, deploy, and distribute that red envelope that you see, that Netflix envelope that essentially changed the way that brick and mortar for video centers happened forever. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. But because of her experience, I really anchor off that and the contributions and the impact that Filipinos have made within Silicon Valley and tech. Thanks. I'll pass it off to Crystal to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Chriselle. I work as an entertainment marketing lead at TikTok. I immigrated to the United States in 2007. So when I was 16 years old, I grew up in the Philippines, born in the Philippines. I went to school at University of the Philippines, where I was very fortunate to get amazing education. I'm currently based in Los Angeles now, and growing up like everyone, I also had really strong female role models. As a Filipino, my mom and my grandma were really strong figures in our household. They were entrepreneurial, strong-willed, nurturing, and always had an equal say in my family. Like Jen, I always have memories of my grandma wearing like a big shoulder pad blazer and like a really fun colored suit, which was so awesome. So yeah, they've been so inspirational for me, and they are they've been amazing mentors as I moved forward in my career. I'll pass it off to Helen.
Hi everyone, Helen Ponce, first generation Filipino American. My parents immigrated to the US in the 70s and met in Dallas, Texas, where I was born. They moved to the Bay in the early 80s, where I was raised and never left. So I went to high school in San Jose. I'm a San Jose State alum, class of 2000. I'm currently the corporate controller at Netflix, where I've been for almost 16 years and lead a team of 35. And we're responsible for the accuracy, timeliness of the company's financial statements. So super excited to hear Jen's story and the red envelope, because Reed is very iconic at our company. I'm a member of the Asian employee at Netflix ERG, where I serve as a mentor to other women at the company, kind of sharing experiences, advising, brainstorming on ways that we can share experience and navigate the landscape. Also a member of the subset of AEN, which is Kababayan, and it's a group of about 100 or so Filipinos at Netflix, where we informally share memes and jokes and things like that in Slack. So passing on to Jay.
Hi everyone, my name is Jay Josa Lazaro Gage. I'm a co-lead of the Filipinos ERG, which is the Twilio Filipinos community employee resource group. I was born in San Diego, California, but I left San Diego to pursue a career in tech. And now I'm currently based out of Redwood City, California. And so while I currently work at Twilio, what led me up to the Bay Area was actually an opportunity to work for Google. I didn't actually get my degree in anything tech related. I got my degree in painting, an art degree in painting and printmaking. And I was really fortunate that my family didn't, really force me to go into nursing or go in to be a doctor or something like that. They were really encouraging of me to just study or go and get my degree in whatever I was interested in. So I got my degree in painting, and after I graduated, I was in the middle of a recession and couldn't find a job. So I fell back on my dad, who was one of my earliest role models. He made his career in IT without a degree after coming from the Philippines. And so he taught me how to build computers from a very young age. So when I graduated and didn't have, I'm really proud of my dad. So I graduated, couldn't find a job. I went to Fry's Electronics, a computer retail store. And that was the only place that would hire me to put products on a shelf. But because of my dad, I was able to prove to them that I could fix computers. And I became a blue coat. I got to work behind the counter and fix computers. And then after that, I decided to pursue this career in tech. Like, I wasn't going to be a famous painter, but maybe I could go into tech and make money there or something. So got a job at Google, and then decided to leave a larger company to go work at a startup and have more influence and more experience doing other roles. And from there, I found customer success, which has been my passion for the last 8 years. And I really love where I'm working. I now work at Twilio segments. And like I mentioned, I'm a co-lead for the Filipinos ERG. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for everyone's intro. I just want to say this is a safe space, right? Like, we're here in community, and I hope that not only we're here for energy, for, you know, to be inspired, but I hope, yeah, like y'all feel like there might be some things that we'll talk about that gets us vulnerable, right? But that's what we're here for. Like, this is like, I really hope this is family, right? Like, that we can really celebrate our histories, where we came from, who's inspiring us, like, who are these important people. So, you know, thank you for, you know, already being so, you know, open with us. And, you know, I'm really, really excited about the rest of this conversation. But thank you all so much for being here tonight. I will now pass it off to our moderator, Josh. He's going to kick off the rest of the discussion for this evening. So Josh, thank you so much, and take it away.
Thanks, Marie. My name is Josh Fontanella, and I'll be serving as your moderator for this evening. I'm a proud San Jose State Spartan from the class of 2021 and a board member here at FAN. Before we dive in, I want to share a quick quote from Filipino comedian Joe Coy. That's what Filipinos do. When one goes through the door, we let them all go through the door. And it can be hard to be what you can't see. And I'm thankful to have you all tuning in to not only see, but hear the amazing stories and lessons from this amazing panel of leaders. But being a leader, however, doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, patience, and most importantly, a village of support. And so for our first question, really want to take it back to the roots of the panel. What was it like for each of you growing up, and who are some of your earliest role models that showed you success was possible? Suela, if you could please start us off.
Yeah, thanks so much, Josh, and this amazing panel. I'm just so moved. So as I shared, my parents being first-generation immigrants from the Philippines, my mom was one of 8, my father was one of 5, and they were trailblazers in and of their own right. And although they started from the very bottom with $300 in their front pocket and 100 pesos in their back pocket, they came to New York to build this incredible life. And I always looked up to my mom as one of my key role models. She was in the banking industry on Wall Street in the 80s and 90s, which is still white male dominated today and was even more so back then. But I just admired her drive and focus and determination to accomplish anything. And I also mentioned in my intro that I also was very fortunate as well to have a few other mentors also who were my titas. My tita Mimi, she was a pediatrician and she started her own private practice in Newark, New Jersey. She spoke 4 different languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Tagalog, English, and Mandarin and Fukienese as well. My other tita Lala was a pediatrician, but started as a molecular biologist, and she used to live on the 2nd floor of our 2-family house. And my sister and I, Vanessa, would run up there every weekend to do science projects with her. And she did things like grow mold on cheese, and things that our parents, like, let us dissect pigs, things that our parents would absolutely be terrified to do. And my tita Baby, being a single mom in Manila and being in the foreign markets as well. And so having them be so focused, persevering, and goal-oriented were always my main drivers. And my father, from an artistic standpoint, he made it so important for us to focus on being confident and not taking crap from anyone. When we lived in our first house on 70th Street, which was a 2-family house in Jackson Heights, I remember being 5 years old and getting pushed to the floor by the neighborhood bully, Tony Baloney. I ran inside. I said, Dad, you know, this jerk pushed me, I mean, with my 5-year-old language, this jerk pushed me down on the floor. My knees were all scratched up. I was bawling. I said, can you go outside and take care of it? And he held me on my shoulders and he said, no, Twill. He turned me around, pushed me outside. He said, go and defend yourself. And this was my father. He made sure that we advocated for ourselves, that we defended ourselves, and that we can project ourselves with confidence, no matter whether this was a second language for them and for our family. We would do Toastmaster conversations and table topics over dinner every night. He would say, okay, this is the exercise I did at work, 30 seconds, purple juice, sell it to me. And that's exactly what we did. So these were my really early role models and shape who I am today. Jen?
Great, thanks. From my perspective, as I shared in my introduction, really I want to look back in retrospective. It's my parents, right? My mom and my dad, and I anchor off their experience as Filipinos in the Silicon Valley and the contributions and impacts they've made to industry. My mom having helped create that first red Netflix envelope with Reed Hastings. That's our small little piece of fame. My dad, who worked in the hardware assembly lines of Seagate, building those hard drives before we sent that off to different countries. So it's those experiences that I think really impact me in my growth. And today I have the opportunity to actually look up and see women who look like me within my company, reaching the highest level of trailblazing in technology today. And so we've got, from a Cisco perspective, we got Larissa Horton, the SVP of WebEx. So we, really empowering millions of users each day in our own lives, right? Living in a hybrid virtual world. And then Grace Francisco, who's a vice president of engineering. She leads DevNet, which has about 500,000 developers using DevNet. So I'm fortunate because, I get to look up and I see them within the hierarchy of my organization. So those are the inspiration and role models that impact me today. Thanks. How about you, Chriselle?
Wow, that's a really cool quote with Joe Coy a while ago. That's amazing. I love that. Oh, that's from his Netflix special, right? Yeah, that's so cool. So growing up, I think my parents really were really big inspirations. My dad actually grew up in the poorest neighborhood in the Philippines. It was Tondo, Manila. If you've ever heard of Tondo, if you look at pictures, they're basically sitting on a body of water of trash. And then my dad, knowing how hard that life is, decided to be a doctor. So he studied, got scholarships, went through med school all on his own. And he's like the only one in his village at that time who got a medical degree. So that was very inspirational for me. And then after that, changing his career and shifting, moving into nursing so that our family could have a better life in the United States. So my dad left around when I was in 4th grade and tried to build a life here in the US. And we followed when I was 16, which was around 9th grade. Oh, that's awesome. Around 9th grade. So I grew up partially in the Philippines and then moved to Los Angeles. I lived in Panorama City, Pancit, where there's a lot of really, really strong Filipino population. We have Seafood City, Chowking, Jollibee. So it was the place where I found a ton of Filipinos, a ton of home. It's so interesting in growing up in Los Angeles because the Filipinos all sat together, had lunch together, and would all eat Filipino food together. Which of course that wasn't how I experienced it in the Philippines because most of my classmates are Filipino. So I feel like I became more in touch with my roots. And you know, my mom's also amazing. She left the Philippines to have a life here in America, and you know, she couldn't practice medicine in the America as she did in the Philippines, but she was willing to go through that just to provide a better life for my family. So yeah, that's been my journey. I work at TikTok now, and I support, and I'm a member of TikTok Familia, where there's a ton of Filipinos. There's a ton of Filipinos all over tech. I was at Snapchat before, where a lot of our designers, a lot of our engineers were Filipino. Yeah, I'll pass this to Helen.
Thanks, Chriselle. And just a quick plug for Netflix. Everyone go get a membership and watch that Joe Coy special. I think the last one was probably the best one out of all of them. So a little bit about growing up. I grew up in South San Jose in the early 80s and 90s, and I was surrounded by very few Filipinos. I grew up in a predominantly white and Latino neighborhood. So I think for me, it was always difficult to relate to people. And I always tried super hard to not stand out or be different just because I was. So I have a bunch of cousins my age, and growing up, they were always my best friends because I could relate to them. Like, they were the only ones I could relate to. So it was like going to school, being one of the only Filipinos, if not the only Filipino, and trying not to stand out, and then getting to that relief with being with my cousins and getting to be myself. And that's kind of a theme that's resonated with me like throughout my life, throughout my career. But once I got to high school and I started meeting other Filipinos, it was like a super, oh my God moment, because there were other people that weren't related to me that grew up eating the same food, whose parents acted the same way, whose parents were as strict as mine, who hung out with their lolas. And it was super cool to find that sense of belonging. And then as far as role models, my mom was really my earliest role model. She was a nurse, obviously. She worked graveyard, helped run my dad's business, always got me and my brother to school, had dinner ready for us, never complained. And she was like one of the hardest working people I knew. And now that I'm grown up and I have my own kids and my own career, I'm very much like, oh, ish, like, how did she do this? I'm tired at the end of the day. But she just never complained, and she did it. So she was like the iconic badass to me. She always says what she thinks, and I used to tend to not do that, and I do that now. And every time I say something super controversial, I'm always like, oh, I'm being like my mom now, like saying what I think. So she was always, and still is, my role model. So with that, I'll pass it on to Jay.
Yeah, for me growing up, I did grow up in a very like predominantly Asian neighborhood in San Diego. It's Mira Mesa, which is also nicknamed Manila Mesa, because there's a huge Filipino community there. So, you know, through the age of 8, I grew up with other like Filipinos, other Asians. And then when I went to junior high and high school, I actually moved to a different neighborhood, and there was like 3 other Filipino families that were also at my school. So I went from being, you know, with a lot of people that were also like me to being with like my brother and didn't have a lot of people that I could connect with about my like Filipino heritage. And then also I think that like, even though I was in a Filipino community, my parents really wanted me to assimilate and be American. They didn't teach me Tagalog. They didn't want me to you know, really stand out. They just wanted me to blend in with the crowd, you know, like worried about my safety, worried about if I'll fit in or if I'll have the same opportunities as everyone else. So I mean, I know a little bit of Tagalog, like I learned bulaklak when I was little, right? But I think that, you know, because I wasn't with a lot of Filipinos from that age where having a role model is really important. I think that like I looked to, you know, popular media like movies and music to try and find a role model. And so my earliest role models are like Lea Salonga And for those of you who don't know, Lea Salonga is the singing voice of Princess Jasmine and Mulan from the Disney animated movies. And then also Dante Bosco from the Hook movie in 1991. They were my role models. And actually, when I was in high school, the movie The Debut had just come out, and that was huge for the Filipino American community. It really showed the rift that even as Filipinos, we still have between Filipinos from the Philippines and Filipino Americans that are born here in America. So, you know, that like growing up, I really didn't have those role models. And so I'm really excited that we've got this panel going, that there are organizations that are focused on building Filipino community and helping with career progression amongst Filipino professionals, because like I didn't have this and I want to be a part of making this for the future.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing your unique journeys and upbringings. I think role models are very important, right? There are certain people in our lives that they could see something that maybe we don't even see in ourselves, and that really helps set us up for success later down along the road. And it's interesting to see how things go full circle, right? Like you have role models growing up, all of you, and now in your current positions, you're that role model / mentor for others by participating in employee resource groups, also known as ERGs. Some of you as members and even co-leading some of these groups. Why do you feel ERGs are important? And if those in the audience, maybe they want to join an ERG, but their company doesn't have one, what do you recommend they do? Jen, if you could please start us off.
Hi there. In my role, I'm a co-global lead of the Cisco Filipino Professional Network. We've got about 300 plus members across Americas, EMEA, and APJC. And so our objective is to really look at professional development, to look at recruiting, mentoring, and then how we show up to our community with volunteering and fundraising. So I think when you think about, you know, starting an ERG, you also have to think about your company's vision, mission, goals, where they stand with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, you know, are you enabled? Are they empowering you to feel and be seen? And I think, you know, we essentially rebooted Cisco FPN, and I had to combine my passion of giving back to the community, building those bridges, right, between community and what I was doing day to day in my role. Now I look at it in retrospective, and there's a few things that are important to me, tying my passion and the mission of where our company stands. And so for me, it's elevating the footprint of Filipinos in technology, helping build a talent pipeline for those who are early in career or early in grade, to move them into industry. We're seeing a plateau in second degrees, postgraduate, right? Where not enough of us are graduating college. We're seeing a decrease from the McKinsey report, decrease in Asian leadership, specifically among women. So I think enabling all these different factors, building the pipeline, giving us professional development, being seen, having leaders from the top are all things that can be empowered through an ERG. And so if you don't have one, you know, maybe you join the larger umbrella of the Asian Affinity Network that you might be a part of, or, you know, it takes kind of rallying with the people next to you who look like you, saying, let's do something. And it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, for me, the importance of ERGs is really about that sense of belonging and inclusion, and community. And, you know, moving to the Bay Area, I didn't have any family up here, didn't have any friends, so I didn't know where to look for my community. I found them in Union City, but, you know, it took a while to find my people. And I think that even if like Jen was saying, if there's like an Asian community that you can belong to, but you know, there is that identity crisis within the Filipino community. Are we Asian? Are we Pacific Islander? Are we something else? And so having a Filipino community, an ERG that you can belong to is really important for like feeling like you belong at that company and feeling like you are supported by others that have the same struggles as you, the others that have the same experiences, life experiences. So I was very fortunate that I joined a company that had already started a Filipino ERG, because of my previous companies, they either did not have ERGs or they had like an Asian umbrella ERG. And if your company doesn't have a Filipino ERG, one thing that you can do is look to your allies in leadership. Find someone that is just as passionate as you are about social justice work, about anti-racism, about, just like uplifting marginalized groups, underrepresented groups. And that can be your start to starting an ERG. The most important thing is having that executive sponsor or VP level sponsor that is going to help uplift your voice and amplify the voices of our community. So I would recommend to find your allies and activate them, because, alone we can't do this, but together, like, we can do so much.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so I've been at Accenture for 1.5 years and in the tech industry for over 20 years. And by and large, I'm still the only woman in the room, the only diverse woman in the room, and the only Filipino. Before I came to Accenture, the only other Filipino that I had within my network in technology sales was someone who I hired in Houston, a good friend of Tamara and I now, Gigi. And so coming to Accenture and knowing that they were so focused on DE&I and walking the walk and not just talking the talk, quite frankly, that's what pushed me over the edge to join the firm, because I was fortunate enough to have 3 other offers on the table. And I told Accenture, just in all transparency, I have other offers on the table, but I really need to dig deep in understanding what your DEI strategy is. I'm tired, quite frankly, of being the only one that looks like me when I'm approaching doing internal meetings. I've been in client-facing situations, and to be at a firm like Accenture, who wants to show up for our clients the way that we need to be seen, which is we have to look like the population that we are serving. And we are not serving a population of all white men, quite frankly. And we are on the path to shattering glass and bamboo ceilings. So as long as we are going to be empowered and given an opportunity to come together and uplift our community, let's do it. So I came to Accenture. I joined every single ERG. Those who know who other managing directors who talked to me, who had some exposure to the Philippines, because we have a big office in Manila, around 70,000 employees. And they said, well, Twila, just join the APA ERG and join the Hispanic ERG. And those shall come together. And I said, well, you can't really do that. Well, we have a rich history with Spain and the US and Asia. Asia is such a wide diaspora that it's helpful, but it still wasn't enough. And so to Jay's point, I started teaming up with the executive sponsor for the APA ERG in the New York area. And he reached out to me. He heard my story just as I introduced myself here. And he said, Twila, you're of Filipino heritage, correct? I said, yeah, absolutely. And he said, if you wanted to do a get together and bring the community together, you can. And I was like shocked. I felt like I was coming from like a PTSD patient, like, what? I can do this? And so our journey over the course of 4 months is I hosted our first Filipino connection and interest group, and that's the first step before becoming a full-fledged ERG. I hosted a merienda in person, like snack time, but merry, happy yenda. And what I did is I approached it by saying, any and all are welcome. If you have a Filipino background and you want to enjoy some of our merienda, come join us. But if you also want to learn about Filipino culture, join us as well. And we ended up having 50 people there, 6 of which were Filipino, 44 of which were our allies. And it just became such this great critical mass that people started asking me everywhere, can we do this in Stockholm? Can we do this in Latin America? Can we do this in Philly or all of these different places? So what I would share is that ERGs are very powerful in creating a sense of inclusion and diversity, because diversity equals success for every single company. Not just from meeting a quota, but bringing diversity of thought and diversity of experience. And if you don't have an ERG, or even if you're at a small company, what I would say is it starts with one. Even if you're the only Filipino, maybe you host a get together and say, look, this is an opportunity for me to create some awareness and share with you some facts about the Philippines that you may not know. So I'm now going on a marketing campaign now to debunk common myths and assumptions and biases against Filipinos. And that's what we're doing with our Filipino connection. So I'm all for it.
I mean, just to add on to what Twila said, there's a network here that you can tap. So there are a lot of faces here that have their own ERG or are even leading their own ERGs. So reach out to them, add them on LinkedIn and see how you can get started. I don't think anyone here would oppose being a mentor to anyone, regardless of where they are in the stage of their career or their life or where they work. So happy to do that. And I believe the others on this call would as well. But I think for me, the importance of ERGs really showed to me when Netflix is a really hard culture to navigate, and a lot of the tenets of the culture inherently clash with my own. So having other people that I can bounce ideas off of or learn from has been great. And I've also been a mentor to some of the others where I'm like, I've made this mistake. I've let all of these opportunities pass me up. Don't let that happen to you. Shoot me your ideas and I'll look at them and then submit them to your boss. So it's just creating that network of support that you otherwise wouldn't get, like from anyone else. Because I feel like, just like the Joe Coy special, another plug for Netflix, we're always willing to help each other out, right? Because we're facing the same experiences and we don't want people to make the same mistakes that we did. So this is a good place to meet those people, to learn from others, to teach others. So like I said, I'm sure everyone on this call would be happy to help get you started or even make that connection with you. Leverage your network.
I think on my side, something that's a little bit more simple is on Slack, you can see how many people are a member of your Filipino community. And I think having that be quantified will show how many Filipinos there are in your organization. And sometimes in this culture of Zoom and like online meetings, it's hard to know like how many Filipinos really are in the office. So, you know, having like a channel that shows like, look, there's this many people also help. But another way that it's important is we actually source a lot of our marketing, product, whatever feedback from ERGs. So we use ERGs to provide perspective in a lot of our innovation, which is a great use on providing like a more well-rounded feedback on the product and marketing initiatives that we push forward.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing your insights on creating an ERG and also leading ERGs. I think even though FAN's not an ERG, we were just founded in 2021, and it takes one person to plant that seed, and then later on, it really blooms into a tree, the community. So maybe if you're an army of one, 10 years down the road, that might be an army of 1,000. So don't be afraid to plant that seed. It's super important. I wanted to transition us now to navigating your career as a Filipinx professional. A career, it's not always straightforward. There's ups and downs, pivots along the way, uncertain economy and job market. But being a Filipino professional, it could potentially present its own unique set of challenges. And as Jen alluded to earlier, McKinsey studies showed that as Asians go up from entry level to C-suite level, it significantly decreases for women as they go up to the C-suite level. So my question specifically for Helen and Twila, and the rest of the panel, as a panel of Pinay women, do you feel you faced any obstacles or viewed any differently because of your identity? And how did you overcome those obstacles? Helen, if you could please start us off.
Yeah, and this was a super hard question that I spent a lot of time thinking about. I think for me, part of my identity started when I was young, and I just never wanted to stand out because I felt so different. I think I mentioned that I grew up in a mostly white and Latino neighborhood. So I think that just kind of followed me throughout my career. And not only did I feel different because I was Pinay, I was also a young parent. I had my first child when I was a freshman at San Jose State. My first job out of college was at a Big Four accounting firm. All my peers were white and had gone to a UC. So I kind of let all of this get into my head, and I let a lot of opportunities pass me by because I tried to blend in as much as possible, not use my voice, not get noticed, not make waves. But what I think I found over the course of my career is the loudest voice always wins. Whether it's a promotion, being identified as a high performer, they're always going to notice the people are the loudest. So if you're trying really hard not to stand out, because that's what you've known, you've tried to assimilate in your childhood, you're going to get passed over for all of these opportunities because people think you don't want them because you're not speaking up. So there's a tension between trying to fit in and not be different, but being recognized for your accomplishments. So for me, I think you just have to overcome that fear of standing out and recognize that there's value in being different. There's value in your voice being heard, and you just need to be okay with being different and standing out and knowing when we think about diversity, there's the diversity of ideas that's important to bring to the table. So I think that's the biggest thing that kind of resonated with me throughout my life is oh no, I want to fit in with everyone else, so I don't want to be noticed. But if you don't get noticed, you're going to miss out on so much. So you just have to be okay with standing out and tooting your own horn sometimes, which is, I think culturally we tend not to do. So I can pass it off to Twila for your opinion on that.
Thank you. Yes, I will be heard. Great insights, Helen. Very, very often, as I mentioned, I am typically the only female, and that I've faced many obstacles just as we all have, and they come in different forms because status quo in America has been being a white male. And I'm 3 steps, many of us are 3 steps removed from that, no question. Woman, diverse, Filipina, I'm a mother. And to Helen's point, which I thought was a really good one, at first, earlier on in my career, I would walk into the room and it would trip me up because I would look around the room and see that nobody looked like me. I grew up around mostly Latinos and Blacks, and everybody looked white. And so I would come in automatically feeling like I was coming from the back seat because I have now a disadvantage because I'm 3 steps removed from the status quo. And sometimes these microaggressions come across very insidiously, slight comments here and there. Oh, wow, you speak English so well. Oh, didn't you? Well, I assume, I mean, you're Asian, don't you grow up on the 2nd floor of a Chinese restaurant? Ridiculous, ignorant comments. And what I've learned over time is there are biases, and they're going to be biases for as long as I'm sure that I'm going to be on this earth. And I really, when I speak in APA and Filipino specific events, I refer to when Sandra Oh won her Academy Award, she said, when she accepted her award, she said, "It is an honor to be Asian." And I take that with me. It is an honor to be Asian. It's an honor to be a woman, and it's an honor to be Filipino. And what makes us different, what makes us unique, absolutely makes us better. And so now when I walk into the room and I'm at the top 1% of the largest technology management and consulting firm globally, we have 700,000 employees, and there are only 1% of us that are managing directors. And when I walk into the room, be it internally or with clients, I imagine that everybody looks like me, because that may not be the case today, but it will be tomorrow. And even if it just mentally helps me level the playing field so that I make sure that I remind myself that I earned my seat at the table and I will be heard with confidence, and that balance of humility is really key. So finding that way of navigating through self-awareness and building confidence and being able to be seen and heard is critical. And I think culturally, one of the things that I've reflected on is that we come from a very respectful culture, right? I mean, when there are people that are our elders, are superior to us, we speak in a different language. We have to use po every other word. And that's deference in our culture. But in corporate America, respect and deference do not need to coexist. We could be respectful, but we do not need to defer. And so what I would say is when you walk into the room, remind yourselves and think about everybody in that room looking like you, communicate respectfully, know that you're there for a reason, and make sure that you're seen and heard.
Yeah, loving the insights from you both, Helen and Twila. With Helen, like mentioning, be unique and stand out and really own your presence and be proud of it. And then Twila also adding on, it's an honor to be Asian and really taking pride in like where our people have come from and our upbringings, and really trying to put other people on, like Joe Coy said, and shout out to Netflix, like Joe Coy said, he's trying to put other Filipinos on. He's talking about the culture and he wants people to experience the real culture, not just make fun of it. But yeah, continuing on this point, like sometimes we think that if people reach a certain level in a company, that you have to act a certain way, be buttoned up, gel your hair, be serious all the time. And it could be uncomfortable to be something that you're not. And for each of you, like how do you share your authentic self in a professional setting and do so sustainably? Jay, if you can please start us off.
Yeah, this actually took me a really long time, like almost my entire professional career, to figure it out, because I would go from company to company and be very unhappy. Like at first, it always starts off great. You have that honeymoon phase of joining a new company and everything is sparkling and you love it. And then eventually it starts to weigh on you. And so now I know that when I come into a new interview with a new company and I'm exploring opportunities, I'm authentic from that very first conversation. I ask hard-hitting questions that might make the interviewer feel uncomfortable. And if they're not comfortable answering those questions or speaking to their company values, if they're not able to speak about how they will elevate me as a woman, as a Filipina, if they're not able to tell me how they will be supporting me, then I don't want to work there. And actually, my spouse is on the call. And during the pandemic, I was looking for a change in environment because I was working for a company that was really toxic, had a really toxic culture. And so we were in the pandemic. We were quarantined together. And so he's sitting there listening to me in all of these interviews, and he stopped me. And he said, why are you asking this? What if they don't hire you? Like, what if they think that you're, being too extra or something? And I'm like, if they don't hire me because I think it's important to support the Filipino community or to support women in leadership, then I don't want to work at that company. And so the fact of the matter is, if companies are not willing to support underrepresented communities and to support Filipinos, they're going to miss out on a lot of amazing talent. And if that keeps on happening, these companies that all they have are white men on their board of directors, are white men in leadership, they're not going to be representative of the population. They're not going to be their businesses are not going to thrive. And so they're going to need to change that. And so I just say, be authentic from the very beginning and don't settle for anything else. Like if you're not you know, if they're not going to hire you for who you are, then they don't deserve you.
Thanks, Jay. I think for me, I spent a lot of time at the same company, so it was kind of an evolution, right? I spent a lot of time code switching, and I think that's just something that I've been doing since I've been in America. It's I'm someone else at home, I'm someone else at work, and it is just exhausting being two different people. And then I think what I learned over time is that just stop doing it. It's too much work to try to accommodate what other people think you should be, and you should just be yourself. So what I've learned is if I be myself, the world doesn't end. I can be my work self in my personal life. I could be my personal life person at work. Nothing's breaking. No one's getting fired. No one's going to stop being your friend. People are going to accept you for who you are if you're brave enough to show it. And you shouldn't try to conform to what people think you should be. And I think that's a lot of what we try to do. We're being less authentic because we're trying to fit this stereotype of what people think we should be or how we should act. But it's just so exhausting. You have a family to support, work to do. You don't need to add in the extra effort of code switching so that someone will accept you for being someone that you're not. So be yourself. I found over time that the more and more that I let my true authentic self show, I think I actually get more respect for that because it's relatable. And then people realize they don't have to do it themselves. And then if you can show up that way, I think more people are willing to show up as their true authentic self. So don't conform to other people's expectations of you, which I think is hilarious because I actually said that to my daughter this morning because she's a freshman in high school and kind of going through the same thing. I'm like, dude, you don't need to be what someone expects you to be. Be yourself. They'll like you for that. And I think that she's learning that. I just need to remember that myself as a grown-up. So be you.
Great. For me, being at Cisco, really the tagline on our recruitment page is pink hair, don't care. So from the gate, we want you to be your authentic self. And I think being authentic, I think in 2022, right, we've got to be really conscious about where we're choosing to work and invest our career growth and time. Do we align with our overall mission, goals, and vision of our company? Where do they stand, as I mentioned, when it comes to D&I? Is your company empathetic, right? All of these have impact into where we stand, how we're seen within our company. And so for me, I definitely feel supported within my own group. They want to hear about my stories. They want to hear about what I'm working on. I feel like I belong. Belonging is super important. I feel included. So there's lots of inclusion there. But I think at this point, if you're working for a company where there's not empathy and they haven't been accountable, then you need to pivot. You need to find this 2022. We're highly accountable today. And I think we have all the opportunity to look for companies that align with us and our core, their vision to our core values. And if they don't align and they're not in sync, then it's probably not a good fit. Because we want to see the pink hair. We want to see, that you're coming from a Filipino American background or wherever you may be coming from. And so I think it's when we consciously choose where we decide to spend our time and how they support us and if we feel seen. So Twila, how about you?
I love this. So prior to coming to Accenture, I was at GE for a decade and at another tech company after that. And at GE, you may or may not be aware that they have a really rigorous management training program. And that was one of the biggest things that attracted me to GE is that they hire and train a lot of general managers. If you come out of GE, you're going to be a great manager. You're going to be a great leader. And one of the things that you would aspire to do, apart from getting your annual bonus, is being able to go to the Crotonville Training Academy, which was founded by Jack Welch, the previous CEO. And one of the things that I found really striking is when I came in at a manager level, they would talk about like numerical analysis, P&L, et cetera. But when you get to senior manager, director, executive and above, and you were there for 1, 2, 3 weeks, you are not talking about analyzing your P&L and looking at how you can increase margin on your deals. What you're focusing on is self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And that was so eye-opening for me because it wasn't something that I was comfortable doing. I was accustomed to having my person at home and covering myself and covering the best parts of myself in my workplace. And as we were going through this exploration, what I realized is when you show up with vulnerability and authenticity, which believe me, I know is hard for all of us, especially culturally, you build trust and loyalty, and you have people and teams who will run through brick walls for you. And I've led billion-dollar P&Ls. I've had thousands of people in my organization all over the globe. And people don't want to follow a robot. People don't want to have the back of an automaton. They want to be able to follow you and see you lead as an authentic leader. And so being an authentic leader requires you to have self-awareness, to have emotional intelligence, to be able to show up for your true self. And I've done that over the past 1.5 years. And in all transparency, over the past year, I've had one of the most difficult years personally. And I wouldn't have ordinarily shared some of the things that I had. My father passed away last August. A month later, I gave birth to my younger daughter. A month later, my older daughter was diagnosed with a special needs condition, and then my younger daughter was diagnosed with the same one. And I wouldn't have ordinarily shared that. Like Twila of 2010 would have been like, no, I'm working on this myself. But I was so transparent about it that the senior level people that direct reports to Julie Sweet, our CEO, said, Twila, if you need to take time and if you need to take more time than you need, you do what you need. And during talent reviews, I know that those people had my back. And so for me, being authentic and being vulnerable is absolutely important to build trust. And we need to be comfortable and confident so we can work on all of the other hard metrics that we're trying to drive after. And one of these books that I had come across recently is, for the longest time, we were pressured to assimilate to cover our true selves. And there are alarming stats on how many of us have had to cover our true selves, the best part of ourselves in the workplace. And there is this book by a Japanese author, Kenji Yoshino, that's called Covering, the Hidden Assault on Our Civil Rights. And just that title alone reminds me every day, I will not let anyone violate my civil rights, and I will not let anyone dishonor the heritage and my family that I'm so incredibly proud of. And you know what? If you don't like it, and if you're not ready for it, believe me, there are 100 other corporations that are lining up at my door to bring me onto their leadership team.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. It's important to, like Jay said, double clicking on that, asking the hard questions in the interview, because that kind of reminds me of an idea from Jeff Bezos. He talks about work-life harmony. So if you really vet a company and you really align with their mission, you'll be energized at work. If you're energized at work, you'll be energized in your personal life. And it's like a really good positive cycle to just keep you energized and also aligning your values to work that you find meaningful. I wanted to pivot us to like now, we live in this instant age of LinkedIn. Everything is accessible and instant with information. And it could be really easy to just compare your journey in chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. And that could throw off and knock your confidence down. And the survey found that 62% of global employees feel imposter syndrome. Have you experienced imposter syndrome, and how do you deal with it? Jen, if you could please start us off.
Yeah, for me, as mentioned earlier, right, I transitioned from the nonprofit sector into industry. And so from the gate, when I got the seat as a program manager in the cloud collaboration group, I had to work hard I didn't have the same starting point, right? Working day in and day out, learning about agile methodology, learning about, onboarding quick to learn about the practices, watching lynda.com, YouTube, getting certified, doing the work to grind just as hard to even get to that same starting point. And essentially it was hard on myself. And I realized that there were more people betting on me than I was betting on myself. Looking outside in, people saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so it took getting out of my own head and understanding that I wasn't just given this role, right? I earned it. I worked hard to get it. I put myself through school to get there. I did the grind. I did the work. The seat is mine. So understanding that you're not lucky. You worked for it. You did everything to prepare for that moment. And if you can own it and really feel like it's yours, and even take the perspective of the outside in, that there's more people that maybe believe in you than you do. You're at that point right there when you're feeling that imposter syndrome, to leverage that and those people's good energy and their good vibe and their belief in you. Again, they're betting on you, right? And they're putting their money on the table and saying, I believe in you. And this has happened numerous times within my career, specifically women and white women too, who are really helping catapult me. There's that allyship there that I had early in career. So I was really fortunate to be able to show everything that I work hard for and get people behind me. And once I changed that mindset, I was able really to activate and do anything, any challenge, some of the biggest challenges and problems, right, for our company. And if I didn't get it, I always reached out and asked for help. There's this thing we say is give your ego a day off. If I didn't get it, if I didn't understand it, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna ask and find out. So I could do it, and I can do it myself. And then the next time I can do it myself. Yeah, so that's kind of how I get through imposter syndrome.
Yeah, for me, imposter syndrome was, I found myself doing so much work just trying to prove that like I deserve to be here. And I ended up burning out at a lot of different companies because I would work so hard trying to prove that I could do anything. And that's not really the question. Of course you can do anything. It's a matter of like, what are you there to do and what is most valuable for you and your company to do? And so something that my current manager, who's like one of my biggest allies, who's a white man, he has helped me realize that like, it's not about whether or not you can do something, it's should you do that? Like, is that the best use of your time? Like, we have you here, as an example, I'm on the customer success team. And there have been times where I've been asked to advise on something that's more of on the sales process, which is like before somebody becomes a customer. And while I can do that and I can learn about that process, that's probably not a really good use of my time. I'm there to advise on the customer experience and be the voice of the customer. And so like for imposter syndrome, it's really difficult to realize that like, yes, you are there like for that purpose and you are valuable and you are worthy, you are capable. But being able to separate that has been super difficult, and I'm still learning it myself. But I would say just constantly remind yourself that and having high self-esteem is something that I think a lot of Filipinos struggle with because we look different, right? Like our skin color is different, our hair is different. So it can be difficult to think that you could do something that the majority can, but just trying to see past that and remember that there are others out there that, like are encouraging you and look to your family for support, look to your friends for support, because you're all amazing human beings. We're all talented in our own ways. So yeah, it's just something you got to do to get over that imposter syndrome. Yeah. Helen, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think imposter syndrome, I still feel that to this day. And for me, it really manifests itself like in a feeling of fear. Like someone's going to discover that I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be leading this team. I shouldn't be in this meeting. I shouldn't have this role because I'm not as smart as everyone else. So a story that I have is that Mindy Kaling came to one of our company meetings, and someone had asked her if she feels imposter syndrome. And what she had responded with really resonated with me. She said, as an actor, writer on The Office, I'm a publisher of several books. I had my own show. If I have imposter syndrome, then I have really like low effing self-esteem. So I was like, do I want to be that person with really low effing self-esteem? No. So to get over that feeling of imposter syndrome and the feeling like you don't belong or that someone's going to uncover that you shouldn't be where you are, like really look back at your achievements. So she said she was an author, she was a writer, an actor on The Office. And it's kind of like, look at all the things that you've accomplished in your career. Think about that. And that is exactly why you are where you are. Like you work really hard to get there, and you don't place a lot of importance on it because we as Filipinos, we're humble, we talk ourselves down. But there really is importance in recognizing your achievements and understanding like you earned what you got, like you deserve to be where you are. So every time I start feeling like, oh shit, someone's gonna realize that I shouldn't be here, I always think about this Mindy Kaling quote, because you deserve it. Like if someone's asking her and she's super accomplished, if she has imposter syndrome, that is like such a weird thing to think about, because in my eyes, she's super accomplished. Like, why would she feel that? And I'm sure that other people think the same way about you, like when they look up to you. So it's really something that we do to ourselves. And I think it's a very much a cultural thing. Like we're super humble and we super like don't put a lot of importance in our accomplishments because we've been told not to. Be humble, don't brag. But I think you need to, like in this current environment, in the tech space.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing and talking about imposter syndrome, because sometimes it could be seen as a weakness to talk about imposter syndrome, but all of us have to start from somewhere. And it's important to not compare our chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 50. And I echo what both Jay and Helen said in terms of really like zooming out and saying, hey, you are worthy. And the past data points show, if you look at like the like what Kaling's quote was, the past data points show that you're awesome, you're worthy, and you deserve to be in that room and to take and to show that, hey, like I'm here to make some noise. So I wanted to pivot us now. We have 2 more questions left, but going to be a deep question coming in. So in the audience, we have a variety of folks tuning in, from recent grads starting out their careers to those who are further along in their career journeys. For the whole panel, what advice would you give to other Fil-Ams on how to have a career or life that they can be proud of? Priscilla, if you could please start us off.
I think for me, that question, what's the most important thing is surrounding yourself with a diverse group of people in different fields. With my family being in the medical field, I didn't know that there were other careers other than going into something related to medicine, being a nurse, doing things that my parents did and my family have done in the past. So I was actually looking at this Instagram post recently, and they were saying like, what's the most important thing, the journey or the destination? And someone responded, actually, it's the company that you surround yourself with. So surrounding yourself with Filipinos, mentors, allies that come from different backgrounds, so you can learn from them, learn about their experiences, if they like it or not. Yeah, and just I think ultimately being open to everything. Like in my career, I graduated at UCLA with a psychology and linguistics degree, and I was thinking that I would be a speech therapist because it's related to medicine. I could still call myself a doctor if I get a doctorate degree. I got a career in tech only so I could pay for dinners while I was in college. So I got a job at one of the tech companies here in LA, worked with a bunch of my friends just so I can pay for dinner, and turned out that would be the career that I would choose. So I think it's also being open to new experiences, joining a ton of organizations within your campus. Yeah, that's for me. I'll pass it to Twila.
Great. Such great questions. And what I would say is I have several things, and I usually try to keep it to threes, but I can't in this event. So first of all, be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Enough with the comparison. Don't look at who's running faster, who's doing X, Y, or Z, just be yourself. Secondly, pursue the things that you want to do, whatever makes you happy and feeling fulfilled. Do something impactful. I got into technology because I fell in love with the intersection of science and technology when the human genome was just sequenced over 20 years ago. And when I graduated from college, being a Filipina, born and raised in New York, my two options were follow my mother's footsteps in investment banking or follow my tita's footsteps and become a doctor. No way would I have imagined that these careers didn't even exist back then. So do something impactful where you feel that you can have an impact and bring value to the world. Don't forget your heritage and roots and what we bring from our families, work ethic, hustle, the drive to make something great for our family and have a wonderful legacy here for Filipinos. Build your authentic leadership brand. You don't have to be the loudest or most assertive. You could be the strong, quiet type, whatever that is, whether you're an extrovert, introvert, anywhere in between, whatever your leadership brand is, develop it authentically and deliver on it. Advocate and negotiate for yourself. If you get pushed down by a bully, and it will happen, brush those knees off, just like my dad told me to do, turn back around and you fight back. And lastly, I would say kick the door open, just like Joe Coy said, kick the door open for all of us in our community. And let's keep it open by being a sponsor, being a mentor, starting ERGs, raising awareness. Whenever you find an opportunity to uplift our communities, take them. Helen?
Sure. I think from what I've learned over the course of my career is be your own advocate. Be okay asking for what you deserve. I think culturally what we tend to do is be a little more passive and count on our hard work being recognized and waiting for things to happen to us versus being proactive and advocating for ourselves. So like if there's an opportunity that comes up, a risk you have to take, a promotion, we don't do it or we don't put our names in the hat because we're saying, oh, we work so hard, someone's going to recognize that. But what's the harm in like taking that risk and putting your name in the hat? The worst anyone can say is no, and you'd be in the same job that you were before. I always tell my kids this, and it's on things like, I want to ask this girl out, what do I do? And I'm like, just ask her. Like the worst thing she can do is say no, and how bad would that really be? And I kind of feel like we should apply that to our lives, right? Because if we wait for someone to recognize us, we could be waiting a long time versus us taking the risk and just like putting our name in the hat and letting people know we want that promotion, we want that progression in our careers. The other thing that I can say that's super important is be your authentic self. It's just a real waste of time to try to fit in what someone's perception of you should be. And like Twila said earlier, it just builds a lot of trust with people. If you can be your authentic self, people will be their authentic selves with you. And it just creates this environment with like a trusting environment where people inspire each other, are willing to ask for help versus kind of wasting time and trying to fit this perception of who you think you should be, which might not actually be true.
For me, the advice that I would give, is piggybacking off Helen, is to always ask. I had to get really comfortable with rejection. I believe in the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time you're going to get a no, right? 20% of the time you may get a yes, 1 out of 5. But going back to a popular quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't make. So always ask. The next I would say is we're Spartans. We're from San Jose State. We power Silicon Valley. We are the #1 source school for engineering in the country. We ignite tech. So you may think I'm just, I went to San Jose State. How am I going to compete against someone from Wharton, from Kenneth Flagler, from MIT? No, trust me, there's opportunity and there's space for you. And if you're competitive, even better, because tech is a playing field for competitiveness. So you'll have a lot of fun. And then lastly, I'd say, don't ever feel like you don't have mentors or role models just because they may not be in your organization. And I'm going to throw out some names just because I feel like in our homes, they should be household names. We've got Bobby Murphy, who's the CTO of Snapchat, Melanie Perkins, who's the CEO of Canva. Is Adobe going to buy them or not? We have Jennifer Rubio from Away, so she started that. And then, as I mentioned, we've got Larissa Horton and Grace Francisco, senior VPs at Cisco. So we do have role models. We have people that are trailblazing and have broken the bamboo ceiling. So if you're not seeing anyone in your direct organization or where you're working, look outside, right? Filipinos, we're very tribal, we're family. And I think I don't know anyone who wouldn't help any one of us out, right? You want to get a resume in, you need it pushed through, ping someone so they can get it internal, right? Because 5% of resumes are only going to be seen if you go in cold. Understand the timing of whether it's internships or hiring, the time that folks hire, and just being cognizant of those opportunities. So that's the advice that I would give.
And then for me, I think something that Chriselle said that really resonated with me is the company that you keep, right? The people that you surround yourselves with. And just to add on to that, like the people that you surround yourselves with, you should feel encouraged to be your best self and to constantly be a better human, be a better person. So just like thinking about the people, like my closest friends and even my spouse, I know I kind of dissed him earlier, but he really does every single day encourage me to be like a better person than I was yesterday. He encourages me to be, like motivates me to constantly learn and do better. And same thing with my friends and my family. They always encourage me to be my best self, be my authentic self. So as you're thinking about, networking, or as you've graduated from college and you're, building your network, like look to those people that really do motivate you to be who you think like you want to be. Like look to those people that motivate you to be your best self, and try and surround yourself with people that encourage you. Don't settle for toxicity. If the people that you keep company are making you feel like you don't belong there, you don't deserve something better, then maybe it's time to look for a new company, because like you really should feel like you are special. You should feel like you are worthy and valuable. And so the people that you surround yourself with should recognize that as well.
I think that's a great way to end this discussion. You're the average of the 5 to 10 people you spend the most time with. So it'll be wise to kind of spend time with people that are optimistic and trying to make positive change in the world. So completely echo what you just said, Jay. We're now at time. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your unique insights with all of you today. I'll be passing it off to Marie, who will share more updates on how you could stay updated with FAN and also how you could support FAN as well. We're completely volunteer, and we're really trying our best to make sure these events are as best as possible for all of you. So please stick around. And also, we're going to be taking a quick group photo in gallery view at the end. So if you're able to, please stick around. We're going to be taking that picture and be posting it on LinkedIn and for the whole group. So please stick around for that. Marie?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my God. I'm trying like not to cry. I'm like so inspired, y'all. Like this was so much fun. So thank you, Josh. Thank you to the entire panel for being here, for sharing your stories with us. Like I'm so inspired, like, and I hope our audience is as well. But before we officially conclude, we wouldn't be an alumni association if we didn't do a quick membership plug. So quickly here, to all SJSU alumni in the room, we encourage you to scan the QR code shown on the screen and grab the link that we're dropping in the chat and invest in a membership with us, the Filipino Alumni Network. Just as we heard, so many amazing stories on today's panel, we're especially excited to learn more about your story, right? Connect with you, welcome you back as proud San Jose State Spartans. So definitely think about that. But to build up the next generation and to achieve this vision, we know we can't do it alone. So we need your help. Currently, we have 18 members, but we know we can get to 50 and more. We're almost there. So definitely join us today. For social, so everyone on the call today, if you enjoyed today's panel and don't want to miss hearing about any great events and panels just like this one, be sure to grab the links we're dropping in the chat or scan the QR code on the screen. Follow us on social media, get connected, and sign up to our newsletter for updates. We send out 2 newsletters a year, one in spring and one in fall, so stay posted. And then for to everyone on the call, especially non-SJSU alum in particular, if you find yourself non-SJSU alum but still want to support our vision, we highly encourage you to scan the QR code on the screen and consider donating to our Filipino Student Scholarship Fund. Alan alluded to it briefly in his introduction, but we at FAN currently have a 50K goal of creating a scholarship endowment with the university. So with SJSU's overall alumni association acting as our 501c3 fiscal sponsor, you can even write those donations off on your taxes. So go ahead and take a moment, click the links in the chat, scan the QR code on the screen, and really consider donating to our newly founded Filipino Scholarship Fund. Together we can work to uplift the next generation of Filipino American leaders. So far, we've been fortunate enough to reach nearly 1K, which is amazing. If you followed us on social, you'll see more information on this in the coming months, so stay tuned. But overall, we know that this was a lot of information, but please note that we'll be sending an email to all those who registered with a link to the slides, link to the social, and as well as more information about how to become a member and how you can donate to our scholarship today. And from us here at FAN, everyone on the call, thank you so much.